It was 1:33 p.m. over the Red Sea, and the afternoon sun was directly overhead in the specific way it is at low latitudes in late September. Not angled, not soft, but vertical and absolute, pressing down on the water with an intensity that made every metal surface on every vessel in the operating area radiate heat that shimmered in visible waves above the deck plates. The Red Sea in September is one of the hottest operational environments on Earth. The water temperature was 31 degrees Celsius. The air temperature at the surface was 44. Humidity at 83%. The kind of environment where electronics run hot, where aircraft engines work harder than their performance charts assume at standard temperature, and where the human body loses water faster than thirst accurately signals. Every sailor standing watch on an exposed bridge wing or flight deck was wearing a hydration reminder on their wrist. It was that kind of afternoon. USS Bataan, LHD-5, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, was operating in the central Red Sea as the centerpiece of Amphibious Ready Group Bataan. ARG Bataan now returned to the theater after her earlier deployment in the Gulf of Aden. The ship had been in the Red Sea for 17 days, conducting amphibious operations support and maritime security missions with the 26th Marine Expeditionary Unit embarked. 2,200 Marines and their equipment, vehicles, and aircraft. A reinforced Marine Infantry Battalion. A composite aviation combat element built around MV-22 Osprey tiltrotors, CH-53E Super Stallion heavy-lift helicopters, UH-1Y Venom utility helicopters, AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters, and the crown jewel of Marine Corps' aviation integration, a detachment of F-35B, Lightning II short takeoff and vertical landing fighters from VMFA-121, the Green Knights, operating from the Bataan's flight deck with the full sensor fusion and network capability of the fifth-generation platform in the maritime strike and air defense role. The Bataan was not a carrier strike group. She was an amphibious assault ship built for a different mission, configured for a different purpose, her defensive architecture lighter than a Nimitz or Ford-class carriers in absolute terms. What the Bataan had that partially offset that difference was the F-35B, the Marine Corps' version of the Joint Strike Fighter, operating from the ship's ski-jump-free, flat deck and vertical landing and short takeoff configurations brought carrier-equivalent fifth-generation air power to an amphibious platform that previous generations had defended with helicopters and CIWS alone. The Green Knights F-35Bs carried the same AN/APG-81 AESA radar, the same Distributed Aperture System, the same AIM-120D AMRAAM capability as their Navy F-35C counterparts. They changed the Bataan's defensive equation in ways that the Houthi military command had apparently not fully weighted in their operational planning. The ARG Bataan's escort on this day was USS Laboon DDG-58. An Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer operating 6 nautical miles northeast of the Bataan, and USS Carter Hall LSD-50, the dock landing ship that was the ARG's third vessel, positioned 8 nautical miles southwest. USS Laboon carried her full Aegis combat system complement and an air defense loadout weighted toward the threat environment. SM-2 Block 3B ESSM Block 2 in quad-pack configuration, and the specific proportions of each that 17 days of Red Sea operations had established as the right balance for the saturation attack profile that Houthi doctrine consistently employed. An E-2D Advanced Hawkeye from Carrier Air Wing 7, operating from USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, 280 nautical miles to the north in the northern Red Sea, was providing air picture coverage of the Central Red Sea operating area on its scheduled rotation, not dedicated to the ARG Bataan, but available to and sharing its picture with the ARG's tactical picture through the Link 16 network. The Houthi Samad-3 is a fixed-wing, propeller-driven long-range unmanned aerial vehicle that Ansar Allah has employed in attack configuration since 2019, when a coordinated Samad-3 and cruise missile strike against Saudi Aramco facilities at Abqaiq and Kuraz demonstrated the system's operational range and the disproportionate strategic effect that small, cheap, unmanned aircraft can achieve when employed against inadequately defended high-value targets. The Samad-3 has an assessed range in excess of 1,500 kilometers, carries a warhead in the 30 to 45 kilogram range in its attack configuration, and flies at speeds between 150 and 250 kilometers per hour at altitudes that vary by mission phase, high enough during transit to maximize range, low enough in the terminal approach to complicate radar detection. It is not a sophisticated weapon by the standards of major military powers. It costs a fraction of what any interceptor fired against it costs. And it is, against inadequately defended targets, dangerous. The Abqaiq attack demonstrated that conclusively against USS Bataan, against the Green Knights F-35Bs, against USS Laboon's Aegis and the E-2D's picture from 280 nautical miles away. The mathematics were different. At 1:14 p.m., 19 minutes before this story's opening moment, the E-2D crew conducting the Central Red Sea Sector patrol had registered the first anomaly. Multiple contacts, small radar cross-sections, emerging from the Yemeni coastal highlands on bearings consistent with the Bataan's position. The contacts were slow, 200 kilometers per hour, and they were numerous. The count built as the E-2D's radar resolved individual contacts that had initially been merged in the surface clutter at the edge of the detection range. 6 contacts, then 11, then 16, then 22 as the full launch complement cleared the coastal terrain and entered the open water approach over the Red Sea. At 1:17 p.m., the E-2D crew transmitted the contact report. 22 probable Samad-3 UAVs, multiple launch points across 3 separate grid areas in coastal Yemen, inbound bearing northeast toward the ARG Bataan's position. Range at first detection 110 nautical miles. 22 Samad-3 loitering munitions in a coordinated attack wave. The contact data was on Link 16 and in USS Laboon's Combat Information Center at 1:17 p.m. The Laboon's TAO called the ARG commander at 1:18 p.m. The ARG commander, aboard the Bataan, had the E-2D's picture on his display by 1:18 p.m. and 30 seconds. He called the Bataan's commanding officer. He ordered USS Laboon to close the formation. He directed the F-35B detachment to immediate combat launch. And he told the Bataan's Air Operations Center to have every available defensive asset in the air or at Ready 5 within 8 minutes. At 200 kilometers per hour, 110 nautical miles translated to approximately 99 minutes of engagement time. 99 minutes is a long time in defensive operations. It is long enough to launch every aircraft on the ship, long enough to reposition every surface asset, long enough for the Aegis system to compute, assign, fire, assess, and reassign across multiple engagement layers with margin to spare. The Houthi planners had selected the Samad-3's long operational range as an advantage. It allowed launch from sites deep in Yemeni territory beyond the reach of most counter-battery strike systems, and allowed the attack wave to approach from distances that theoretically compress the warning time available to the defending force. The E-2D's elevated radar picture at 24,000 feet had converted that theoretical compression into an actual 99 minutes of warning. The range advantage had become the engagement time gift. 2 Green Knights F-35Bs were airborne from the Bataan's flight deck at 1:24 p.m., launched in a rolling short takeoff run that covered less than 300 feet of deck before the aircraft cleared the bow and began their climb. A third F-35B launched at 1:26 p.m., a fourth at 1:29 p.m. 4 Green Knights aircraft, all armed with the AIM-120D AMRAAM and the AIM-9X Sidewinder, climbing to 20,000 feet and turning southwest toward the inbound contact formation. Their AN/APG-81 AESA radars went active in search mode as they climbed, building their own independent picture of the inbound contacts, while the E-2D continued to feed the formation's composite picture through Link 16. Now, let us address the specific technical problem that 22 Samad-3 UAVs present to a defensive system, and why the Houthi operational concept, while sound against targets without air assets, was fundamentally flawed against an ARG with embarked F-35Bs. The Samad-3's primary survival mechanism is its small radar cross-section, smaller than a conventional aircraft, roughly comparable in some aspects to a large bird, and its ability to approach at low altitude where the surface radar's detection range is limited by the Earth's curvature. Against a ship relying solely on surface-based radar and point defense weapons, a wave of 22 Samad-3s arriving from multiple bearings presents a genuine saturation problem. The CIWS systems have limited simultaneous engagement capacity. The ESSM's inventory is finite. If enough weapons arrive simultaneously from enough directions, the mathematics of simultaneous engagement can favor the attack. The F-35B changes this calculation completely. An airborne fighter with an AESA radar looking down at low-altitude contacts has no surface radar horizon problem. The AN/APG-81 at 20,000 feet can detect a Samad-3 at ranges that give the pilot engagement time measured in minutes per target, not seconds. The F-35B's Distributed Aperture System adds the infrared detection layer. The Samad-3's propeller engine exhaust creates an infrared signature that the DAS detects passively, without the F-35 emitting any radar energy, at ranges that allow threat assessment and weapon assignment before any radar needs to be used. And the AIM-120D AMRAAM, designed for air-to-air engagement against maneuvering fighter aircraft, is significantly more capable against a 200 km/h propeller drone than it was designed to be required to be. The AIM-120D, engaging a Samad-3, is the ballistic equivalent of a Formula One car chasing a bicycle. The lead Green Knights pilot acquired the first contacts on his AN/APG-81 at 1:34 p.m., 78 nautical miles southwest of his position. The Samad-3 formation spread across a front approximately 22 nautical miles wide, the individual contacts tracking steadily on their GPS-programmed approach courses. He designated contacts in the lead element of the formation and radioed the engagement plan to his 3 wingmen on the tactical frequency. The plan was simple and efficient. Work the lead element first, progressing through the formation from closest to farthest, using AIM-120D at medium range and transitioning to AIM-9X for any contacts that close to short range. Conserve AMRAAM inventory by ensuring each missile was fired at a valid acquisition track. No speculative shots. The first AIM-120D left the lead Green Knights' internal weapons bay at 1:37 p.m., targeted on the northernmost contact in the lead Samad-3 element at 62 nautical miles. The AMRAAMs' active radar seeker, in the terminal phase, acquired the Samad-3's small but real radar return at 4.2 nautical miles and tracked it to impact. The Samad-3 was rendered inoperable and fell into the Red Sea. Second, AIM-120D, second contact 40 seconds later. Third, fourth. The Green Knights were working through the lead formation element in the systematic sequence that the F-35's sensor fusion and AMRAAM's long-range capability enabled. Each engagement conducted from a comfortable standoff range that put the F-35 pilots in no danger from the Samad-3's warhead and left the aircraft well clear of the debris footprint of each neutralized drone. USS Laboon's Aegis combat system was tracking the full formation simultaneously through the E-2D's data link and its own SPY-1DV surface search radar, which was beginning to acquire the lid contacts at the inner boundary of its detection range against low-altitude targets. The Aegis system was computing SM-2 and ESSM Block 2 engagement solutions on contacts that survived the F-35B outer layer, assigning interceptors to the Samad-3S that the Green Knights' AMRAAM inventory could not cover before they reached the surface-based engagement envelope. The cooperative architecture meant the F-35Bs and the Laboon were not operating independently. They were sharing a picture and coordinating their engagements to ensure no target was engaged twice and no target was missed in the gaps between the two layers. By 1:49 p.m., 16 minutes after the first F-35B went active, the Green Knights had neutralized 12 of the 22 Samad-3s in the outer engagement layer. The remaining 10 were inside 40 nautical miles of the Bataan's position and entering the SM-2 engagement envelope. USS Laboon fired her first SM-2 Block 3B at 1:51 p.m. against the lead survivor at 38 nautical miles. The SM-2's semi-active radar seeker, guided by the Laboon's illumination radar, acquired the Samad-3's small return and intercepted at 31 nautical miles. The ESSM block, 2 batteries engaged the next 4 contacts at ranges between 24 and 17 nautical miles. The quad-pack configuration allowing 4 simultaneous engagements from single VLS cells, the active seeker of the Block 2 variant tracking the Samad-3S without requiring continuous illumination from the Laboon. 5 Samad-3s survived to the inner defensive layer, inside 12 nautical miles of the Bataan. 3 were engaged by Laboon's final ESSM assignments at ranges between 11 and 8 nautical miles, all 3 confirmed neutralized. The 4th was engaged by the Bataan's own ram launcher, the RIM-116 rolling airframe missile, its passive infrared seeker tracking the Samad-3's engine heat signature without emission, at 4.8 nautical miles. Clean intercept. The 5th and final Samad-3, the last survivor of 22 launched, reached 2.3 nautical miles from the Bataan's port quarter before the forward Phalanx CIWS acquired it on its own autonomous radar and engaged for 1.1 seconds. Neutralized. 22 Samad-3 loitering munitions. 0 impacts. The Bataan's hull was untouched. The 26th MEU's Marines aboard her had known something was happening. The F-35B launches, the increased tempo on the flight deck, the 1MC announcement of heightened readiness, but had felt no impact, heard no detonation, experienced nothing that distinguished this afternoon from any other day at sea in the Red Sea, except for the 16 AIM-120D expenditures that the ordnance crew would be accounting for in the ammunition log. The after-action debrief in the Green Knights' ready room that evening was the specific kind of debrief that combat aviators conduct when the mission went well, and everyone came home and there is useful tactical data to review. 16 contacts neutralized with AIM-120D. Engagement geometries reviewed. Weapon-to-target pairing efficiency assessed. Notes on the Samad-3's infrared signature profile from the DAS optical data. The engine exhaust temperature and emission spectrum that the system had recorded on every contact. Data that would update the threat library used by every F-35B crew in the theater. The engagement had also been in the specific way that American operational intelligence exploitation works, an involuntary technical intelligence collection event on the Samad-3's propulsion, navigation, and infrared emission characteristics at operational conditions that no laboratory test can replicate. The Houthi military command's after-action assessment would confront the same conclusion that every previous Houthi operation against defended American naval assets had produced. The weapon that defeated undefended tankers and Saudi infrastructure in 2019 was not the weapon that defeated defended amphibious assault ships with embarked F-35Bs in the Red Sea in the present day. The Samad-3's operational concept was built for targets without air assets. The moment the target had air assets, even a 4-aircraft detachment of F-35Bs operating from a non-traditional carrier platform, the Samad-3's small radar cross-section provided no meaningful protection because the AESA radar that was looking for it was above it, looking down, without the radar horizon limitation that the weapon's design had been optimized to exploit. The Houthi Weapons Development Program, supported by Iranian technical expertise, had been expanding its portfolio steadily. From early Qasif-1 drones to the more capable Samad-3, from basic Scud derivatives to the Zulfikar ballistic missile, from improvised explosive devices in the water to the Manta underwater drone. Each new system addressed a perceived gap in the previous generation's capability. The pattern of development was genuine, and the threat was real. What the pattern could not outrun was the pace of American defensive adaptation. The SM-6 Block YB that closed the hypersonic intercept gap, the AQS-22 that defeated the thermocline, the F-35B that put AESA radar above the Samad-3's approach altitude. Every new Houthi weapon encountered a defensive system that had been built in the specific institutional knowledge accumulated from years of threat assessment for exactly that weapon. The Bataan's flight deck was busy that evening. The OH-1Z Vipers were going out on their scheduled patrol rotation. The MV-22s were moving equipment for the MEU's logistics cycle. An F-35B from the Green Knights was on the deck elevator, its maintenance team running through a post-flight inspection that included pulling the engagement data from the mission systems. The complete recording of 16 Samad-3 engagements from first DAS acquisition to AIM-120D impact on each of the 16 targets, a data set that would be analyzed, shared, and incorporated into the threat library that made the next engagement slightly better prepared than this one had been. Somewhere in the Yemeni highlands, 22 transporter erector launchers that had been operational that morning were dispersing to their concealment positions, their crews completing the post-launch procedures that operational security required. The launches had been coordinated. The timing had been professional. The weapon count had been the largest single Samad-3 employment in the Houthi campaign's history. The result was 22 drones in the Red Sea and an American amphibious assault ship that was, at the moment the Houthi launch crews were completing their dispersal, launching her AH-1Z Vipers on the evening patrol schedule. The Red Sea stays open. The Bataan keeps sailing. And the Green Knights of VMFA-121 had 16 new entries in their engagement log, every one of them a Samad-3 that found out the hard way that propeller drones do not outrun AMRAAMs, and that the F-35B brings the same fifth-generation answer to an amphibious ship's deck that it brings to a super carrier's. 16 for 16 in the outer layer. 0 impacts on the hull. Same result, different platform. Because American air power is American air power, whether it launches from 100,000 tons of nuclear carrier or a 41,000-ton amphib, the fifth generation does not care about the deck it takes off from. Bye for now.